Welcome to my channel. Today, an art journal tutorial. We're going to be using the napkin inlay technique. Well, at least that's what I'm going to call it. We are going to start with this napkin from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. It's called Pumpkin All Over Linen. So I've left the backs on it for the while, and I'm going to use this stencil, Nautical Illusion, I think it's called, and I am just borrowing the curve, the line that is on here. I really like it, so instead of recreating the wheel, I'm just going to borrow it. And I'm tracing that swoop with a soft pencil. I'm actually using my Stabilo All pencil in brown. I don't want to rip the napkin. And as you know, napkins are fairly fragile. So with a pencil or something you could do it with a chalk, a watercolor pencil, something that's a little softer. So once I have the line, and you may not be able to see that swoop, but I can see it enough to allow me to cut it out. Now here's why I left the extra plies on, because it's simply easier to cut when it has 3 layers as opposed to just 1. Now my intent at this time was just to have one swoop of these pumpkins on the page, but the page wanted something different. I'm working in my 9x12 Canson Mixed Media Art Journal page, and the page has been gessoed. I often just have a gessoing session and I gesso multiple pages at the same time. So here I'm kind of working where I have the one swoop and I want to have this Julie Nutting doll in there, and my plan is to decorate the top and the bottom. What I ended up doing was turning it to the other orientation and having 3 sections of the napkin, top, middle, and bottom, and I'm going to colorize the other parts. So here I'm just using that Stabilo All pencil. This is a brown one, and I'm tracing where the napkin is going to go. I'm going to inlay the napkin back here, but I don't want to glue it down right now because I am planning to add paint, and I don't want to get paint on the napkin. I want to make it easy to do whatever I want in those 2 sections. So I chose to use cadmium yellow and orange. These are medium-bodied acrylic paints, and I'm mixing them somewhat wet and wet as I put them on the paper. Now that, as I said, it's already gessoed, so it's going to take less paint and go on more smoothly. And I chose these colors because they match the colors of the pumpkins. I did spend some time looking at the colors and matching and swatching them out on the side off camera. I don't often use the yellows and oranges in this bright, warm color scheme, so this was a lot of fun to do something that I don't normally do. It was a little bright, so I took some white gesso and thinned it down a little bit with water, and I'm just giving it a whitewash just to knock it back just that little bit. I don't want it to take over the focals on the napkin. So I'm happy with the first one, and so I'm doing the second swoop. So this napkin that I'm using, the Pumpkin All Over Linen, as well as lots of wonderful fall napkins, can be purchased at Ninny's Napkins. There is a link in the description box and a coupon code if you haven't already used it. So I'm taking the napkin parts and lining them up just to see if I've got enough paint. I don't want to have any white spots, so I'm just adding a little bit of paint. Nor do I want to go too much where the napkin's going to go because there's white on that napkin or a very light color, and I don't want the color to come through the napkin. You're just kind of dry fitting it. If you've got another name instead of inlay technique, I'd love to hear it. Paper piecing? So this stencil is called Mini Dots, and it is one of Crafters Workshops, and it is a cake and cookie stencil, but the size of these and some of the patterns are perfect for art journaling. I just don't use them to decorate cake and cookies. I'm stenciling with teal. Now, why teal? Because teal is opposite the color wheel of the yellow and orange, and it's going to add a lot of energy. Then I'm using that same mini dot stencil and using burnt sienna. That's that reddish brown color. This stencil is called Petal Burst, and it is the 6-inch stencil. And I am just using the center part of this, and I'm going to come in with the burnt sienna as well as the teal. And I'm layering them up. So sometimes I'm going over areas that I've already stenciled. I want this to look random, not so predictable. And I want to keep, for the most part, my stenciling on the colored areas. I don't want to go where it's white because that's where I'm going to glue down the napkin. If you do go over, you can just take some gesso and go over that before you glue the napkin down. I tried putting some unbleached titanium through the stencil there, but it wasn't showing up enough. So I wiped it off with my baby wipe, and I'm coming in with teal. I really love the background that I'm creating here, and I'll have to remember this color combo and use this at a different time. When you play around with things and experiment, sometimes you come up with great discoveries. Write them down so you remember to use them again. So now I'm just going to put in my napkin. I want to get a good look of how it's coming together. Are the colors the right color? Do I need to do some more whitewash? How's this all going to work? And I'm quite happy with what we have. And there's my Julie Nutting doll. And I'm going to put the saying, give them some pumpkin to talk about. And so I'm just kind of playing with where everything's going. How does it look? Just kind of checking whether my ideas are coming together the way I think they're going to. Now I'm grabbing some white paint, and I am going to add some of that mini dots with using that mini dot stencil with the white. I just felt that because the napkin is on a white background, I wanted to have that color represented here. That makes for a cohesive page when the colors in one part are showing up in another part. What do you think of that background? Wanted a little more opaque, so I'm putting the stencil back on top, lining it up, and just adding a little bit more paint. Just want that white to pop a little more. Because I'm going to put the sentiment, and that's going to be black, I am doing a little bit of script stamping with my black archival ink. This is adding a fine pattern, a fine scale pattern. You want patterns of different sizes. And this is very subtle, but it adds to the whole picture. And the napkin goes back in. I'm very happy with how it's done, and I'm ready to glue the napkin down. So right now I am peeling off my excess layers. There are 2. Positioning the napkin, and then I will be gluing it down with my fluid matte medium from Liquitex. I put it about 2/3 of the way, put the napkin along the straight edge, push it down, and then I put the glue or the adhesive on the rest of it, and then I put a coat of the fluid matte medium on top. This seals the napkin, so if I put any color or wet medium afterwards, it's not just going to soak into it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom napkin inlay and the top one. So a napkin like this pumpkin all over with an all over pattern is a great choice for using to inlay on a background. So look through your napkins. I'm just cutting off the excess. I'll save that for some other project. Or I might just glue the pumpkins down and use them as embellishments. It'll just go into my stash. I have 3 bins on my desk. I've got focal images, collage papers, and words, and anytime I don't use something in a particular project, I just put it in there, and then periodically I might file those more permanently where they belong, flowers with flowers, fall items with fall items. But then when I'm in the middle of a project, I can just grab that bin and I look through it, and quite often I find something to use. It's kind of like a mystery bag. Now I'm going to add shading, and I'm using the burnt sienna color and my angle brush to shade along the background that I colored and on the napkin. So first I go on the background, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the napkin. And I just think this adds so much interest. In one way, it makes it stand out more, but in another way, it makes everything blend together better. I think just adding that darker color just makes everything pop. And here I'm doing the same on the napkin part. And this is why I wanted to make sure I put a coat of matte medium on top, because if it was raw napkin, it would just wick through it and you wouldn't get the same effect. I am taking time out in between to dry at every stage, even though I don't capture that always on camera. I think you have better things to do than watch paint dry. Now I want to colorize my Julie Nutting doll, and I'm just using my acrylic paints, but you can use your pit brush markers, watercolor crayons, Inktense blocks, whatever. I use the orange and a little bit of the burnt sienna and white that I already had on my palette, mixed them up to make the flesh color that I'm chosen to use. And I'm just using a small round brush to paint it all in. Now this Julie Nutting doll has been stamped onto, it's just copy paper. And I chose to color her hair brown because I want it to stand out. I want it to contrast with the background. If I put it blonde, it would just kind of disappear. So I chose the brown. There's the brown stems of the pumpkins on that napkin. And then for the dress and the hairband and shoes, I am using that teal. And we had the teal that we use through the stencils on the background part. And this was always my plan to use. So if you use a different color than teal on yours, you want whatever colors you've used in that background to be on the dress of your Julie Nutting doll. Don't have a Julie Nutting stamp and are interested in them? I know that Nicole has them at Ninny's Napkins. They work so well on so many pages. I've definitely gotten my use out of them. I like items like that that are in my stash. And there we have it. Now I play around a bit with the sentiment and the size of the sentiment to get it just perfect. The scale just seemed to be a little bit off, so I ended up making the sentiment a little bit bigger. Let's give them pumpkin to talk about. And I'm gluing it all down with my fluid matte medium. I didn't want to put the sentiment over top of the pumpkins because that's kind of the theme of the page. So once that is all dry, I grab my woodless charcoal pencil. This is the extra soft one. And I am basically shading where I had put the orange. And I like that two-tone effect. You've seen me doing that before. I could have shaded with my angle brush and black acrylic paint. I just wanted the softer look that the charcoal pencil gives. And I know I'm not doing any more wet medium after this, so it's not going to reactivate. And I love this woodless charcoal pencil. I've found something similar in Amazon. You can check it out. And then instead of shading on this with my angle brush, I have this charcoal pencil. I'm just adding shading to the dress, to my Julie Nutting doll with the charcoal pencil. Stabilo pencil would also work, that you might have to activate it with water. But you can just smudge the Stabilo as well. Taking off the tape that keeps all that mess from my coils. And there we have the finished page. I am really happy with how this came together. It came together better than how I imagined it in my head. I hope you give the inlay technique a try. There are close-ups of this finished art journal page. Until next time, go get creative.